Hello, hello, hello. My name is Matthew Terry, founder and CEO of Suade, and welcome to People in Sales, Not Salespeople, a podcast where we analyze the person behind the salesperson. And I'm super excited to introduce our first guest, Dana. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to have you on. Dana, how long have you been in sales?
Yeah, I mean, well, how old am I? I mean, that's for all of us, right? We've
It's
been
great.
selling since the day we were born. I guess professionally, I probably went into sales probably 25, 30 years ago. So yeah, pretty early on in my career.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Did you always want to go into sales, or was it something that kind of you happened to like as you went along?
No, it wasn't, I didn't think about like, hey, I want to go into sales. You are a product of your environment. And I had some friends, that were doing sales. And actually the first sales job that I ever had was selling office equipment
Okay.
to businesses. And I had a good buddy of mine that was doing it. He was like, hey man, you got to get out here and try this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my first foray into it. So
Yeah.
again, it was kind of led by somebody else, but I guess I like the idea of being able to go out and obviously at the time I didn't know all that entailed, but being able to go out and sell something and you can get more than $10 an hour. I could actually get $100 if I actually sold something that was worth the value to someone. So
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So there's a lot of the commission involved of
sure.
sales, and
Yeah.
also hustle that kind of
Yeah.
drew you to it. Okay,
Yeah.
what were you doing before sales, if you don't mind me? Like what?
Yeah, and I wasn't very good at copier sales, by the way, either. By the way, but that's all. That might be
Well,
a whole other podcast. But what was I doing before that? I mean, I did like a lot of people do when they get out of high school and college. I mean, I had a bunch of random jobs in retail and was actually working. And actually, the job I had just before that was a pretty professional job. I was working with GE Capital
okay,
in the collections department and running a call center.
okay,
So
yeah,
after spending a couple of months on the phones, I was leading a team that was doing early delinquency calls for private label credit cards for GE Capital.
gotcha. Okay, so you kind of had your foot in the door and into conversations at least a little bit
Yeah,
before you got.
yeah, and and I'll say something about that too, just because you and I never really talked about that before, but I think that experience, and again, I spent like 6 months on the phones doing that,
Mhm.
but we were calling all across the country, um, various parts of the country, various different kinds of credit cards for high-end furniture sales, for jewelry, for lumber. You have to learn how to talk to people because not just I mean the region of the country, the types of purchases they made, may have some indication of like the type of person they are, and
Mhm.
just being able to reflect and talk to that person, I was incredibly valuable
Yeah.
uh, early on.
We talked about like where you've been, but I would love for you to give an overview on where you are now and what you're up to right now when it comes to sales and the company you're working on.
Yeah, yeah. So, I said I'd been a B2B enterprise salesperson at heart. 10 years ago, I was having the if not now when epiphany of wanting to do something for myself. Some life changes, with family and not wanting to travel as much as I used to travel. So
Mhm.
I started my own company called Sun, SUN, and it's derived from the Beatles song "Here Comes the Sun."
Okay.
And so another story for another time, but it's very personal. And I think the thing that I'd share about that is for all founders is like when things get hard, and they do, and they will get hard, you need to remember why you started.
Mhm.
And so that, naming it Sun, was a way for me to remind myself every day, that's why we got started. But then, as I said, I wanted to work with small businesses locally in the region. I'm in Northeast Ohio. I have a passion for the state of Ohio and Northeast Ohio specifically. I've lived here, my whole life. But helping small businesses grow. I got recruited by a smart mobility company out of venture-backed smart mobility company out of Boston, probably 7 or 8 years ago. That was my first foray into tech, venture-backed tech. So, I got to wear t-shirts instead of suits. This was, pre-COVID. So it was really awesome. I drink a lot of cold brew. I haven't had a drink yet, but, I drink a lot of cold brew.
Yeah.
And I got to ride bicycles because that's what we did. We did bike share through the Midwest.
Okay.
And from that, it was really, yeah, it was really exciting. And then one of the things I learned, like I felt like, having an eye towards the enterprise sale, I think was helpful. But then I had to go learn, a lot of the things we talked about earlier. And so, just, how do I get to that know, like, how do I get them to know me, and how do we, build relationships and, not be transactional in building relationships too, by the way. I don't, sometimes I feel like I have to, caveat that, but it's not being manipulative by me saying, hey, I want to develop a relationship with somebody because maybe someday we can help each other. I think that's real, that's human, and I think most of us, appreciate that type of thing. But yeah, so from there, I started working with and for some tech companies, insure tech, drag techs, fintechs, whatever, tech you got, I've been a mentor at a VC and venture development organization here in Cleveland called Jumpstart.
Yeah.
I contract with them as an entrepreneur in residence also, so I support their near venture tech startups here, and I also work directly with a host of other startups as well, and as well as still some small businesses, but usually small businesses in more high growth type industries.
Yeah.
To founders, so help them flourish in what they're doing, to start to get some deals across the line too, because it's not just about like, hey, I can sit and tell you what you should be doing, but like, hey, let's get some real stuff done.
Right.
Right. And then, how can we document those things that we're doing and find what the right practices are? So like when you're ready to go hire somebody, you could actually go do that and start to scale. Because I think one of the things that, I work with companies that are raising money all the time. Hey, I'm raising $2 million. Like, what are you going to do? Like, I'm going to go hire a salesperson. I'm like, well, what are they going to do when they get here? Like, well, they'll figure it out. And then yeah, exactly. Well, and then break my soapbox about this. So stop me whenever you want to. But they're like, hey, I'm going to go hire a high-end sales person from a competitor, which that high-end salesperson from the competitor has a lot of process already built where they're at.
Right.
So they're not the gritty, grindy. Plus, they're also going to cost, right?
Right.
And how does that work out? I mean, I've seen how it works out. If it works out for you, then that's great. But I know, historically how that works out. Or you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go hire somebody on the cheap. Maybe I'll go get, somebody for, $20 an hour, a couple hours a week. They can do some things, but you don't know what you're doing. And it's okay for us to say we don't know. It's okay to be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So, but you don't know what, and that's my job to tell you. If you can't say it, I'll say it for you. Like, hey, you just don't know what you're doing.
Right.
To be able to.
That's okay. Yeah.
Plus, you're still working on product. And from a tech perspective, like at this stage, you're still iterating on product. You want to talk to customers so you can hear things firsthand, because that person on the other end, you just go hire somebody to do it. They're not looking at that. They're looking, if they're good at sales, they're trying to get deals done. They're not trying to figure out how to make the product better, so or the solution better. So anyhow, that's yeah. So that's what I do. We do it in like a 3-month plan from beginning to end, with some deliverables along the way, and hopefully they're ready to go, and not ready to go, but hopefully they move the needle on some of the customer activity and are ready to go.
Yeah, that's huge. And, thank you for supporting us and the community, because we need it, right? We're not salespeople. We're product people. We're people who have problems, and we don't know how sales actually works. We don't know the ins and outs of how to generate customers, and move them down the line. So I think it's definitely needed for any startup. So, and you mentioned a lot of good things there. You mentioned some things around hiring the wrong person. I completely agree. If you hire someone who's in enterprise sales, who already has like the structure in place, right? They're not gonna know and want to cold call or set up HubSpot or set up all the processes that they need to set up to be successfl. They're just like, hey, I know how to sell, right? So I think that's huge. And I think you alluded to this a little bit, but I wanted to dive into culture when it comes into sales. And you've been in lots of different sales environments, and I want to ask, like, have you ever been a part of like a bad sales culture, and what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that yeah. So I think that where the bad sales culture comes in, and usually if there's a bad sales culture, there's a bad culture.
Okay, it's just a bad culture.
Period.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just like, because it's bad sales culture, then it's usually an HR issue, and you can fix it that because you have nobody else to do that, specifically. But I think that if founders haven't done, like, if they can't articulate what the process is for someone to go deliver, get somebody interested and then deliver their solution, if they can't articulate that, it is not fair for them to expect that whoever they hire can go do that too.
Gotcha.
And I don't mean get in the room and wow people, because there are some super smart people that can get in a room and wow people. Like,
Mhm.
they're just people like, man, I like being around her, or I like being around him.
Right.
But it's different when you're asking somebody to write a check. And so I think that, and then, who owns it, right? I mean, this is probably this is one of my pet peeves, probably. And I have kids, so I'll use a reference, and I don't know if anybody has kids listen to this, but if they do, like, if you're at a get together, a party, and everybody's watching the kids, then nobody's watching the kids, because we're all here and we're all doing it, and nobody's really responsible for anything, right? And I would say that, from a selling perspective, people have to be accountable. And accountability is good because it brings clarity for all of us. And like, there's nothing worse than a salesperson waking up like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But if I know specifically what I'm accountable for, then I stay focused on it, and then we can course correct if it's not the right thing, and we'll course correct together. But I think that when the founders can't communicate that clearly, then people don't have specific ownership of activities and tasks, and again, it gets into the process, like this introduction, like, hey, if I'm going to do my initial outreach and I'm calling you, I want to introduce myself and do some really initial discovery to determine whether or not it makes sense for us to talk again.
Right.
And we might not, and that's okay, but we'll learn that. And then being able and just being able to articulate that to your sales team, and then not having too many cooks in the kitchen, that's a challenge. Like, so if and I've seen this with companies that have raised money, and maybe they'll bring a couple people in to do some different things, and then everybody's kind of doing their own thing, and it just doesn't create a really good team culture.
Yeah.
There are other things I can think of. I know that kind of, I just, where it breaks, it just falls down.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the last thing, let me just say one more thing too. I apologize, but I know I will
No,
forget.
this is all good. Go ahead.
You got me racing, and now my mind is like, go to market, like, so sales culture, bad sales culture, like, we're going to market. So going to market means, I don't know, it means a lot of different things. What I love is, I love terms that we use all the time that nobody really knows what it means. It means something different than the you to me. So I can say marketing or business development or sales or go to market, and
We're all
yeah, everybody's got a different vision of what that means. But if the customer is not first, this discussion, then it is not going to work. And I've sat in go-to-market meetings before, where we've got customer success there, and we've got marketing there, and we've got executive leadership there, and we've got product there. And then begrudgingly, somebody from sales will be there, which means the customer's not there, because you will have people sitting in the room saying, oh, you know what, the solution will do this, and customer success is like, yeah, we can deliver that. And the executive team, like, yeah, let's go, let's do this, and marketing's like, yeah, we'll do this flashy website, and I'll get a bunch of clicks and opens on emails. And I'm like, who's buying this stuff, right? Like, who name one company that said, like, hey, you know what, I don't know. So I mean, that creates culture challenges. So
culture issues.
I'm
Disconnect.
not scarred, Matthew. I'm not scarred by any of this. I mean, so until my hands start moving, I can visualize, I can see it. So anyhow.
Yeah, that's good though. I think the disconnects, like you said, and when it comes to bad culture, is the founder's knowledge and sales in general, and like what it actually means. Because you said something really, really interesting. And that, like, if startup hires a salesperson and just tells them, hey, go sell the product, that salesperson isn't gonna know like what the product does, what the product could do, and how to translate what they're hearing from customers to like product knowledge and how to build a better product, which is why it's
Right.
important for the founder up front to be the salesperson talking to the customer.
Right.
And two, the founder is not going to be able to communicate tasks and be able to hold the salesperson accountable to what they should be doing. Right.
Right.
And like you said, the salesperson is going to wake up like, I don't know what I should be
Right.
doing right now.
Right.
Right. Because there's no leadership. Right. The
Right.
founder's just like, go sell. And then the salesperson's just in their own bubble. Right. And they're
Right.
just have to go sell. I don't know what that means. Right. There's no communication, there's no transfer of knowledge, and that leads to
Right.
people being angry and not really knowing why they're angry. They're angry because
Absolutely.
they're bringing in sales, but they're like, they don't know the problem behind the problem, you know?
No, I appreciate you highlighting that, and it's one of the things as an enterprise salesperson I took great pride in is not selling bad deals. Like I never
Mm.
actually I actually left my company 2 years later. I had somebody call me after I left, thanking me for a deal that I had signed for the company before I left because the way that we put the deal together it was a good for the customer, but it also made it protected our margins so we can maintain quality revenue. And quality revenue is another thing that we can talk about with startups and whatnot. I think that how that translates to startup life, though, most specifically, is like if we want to do pilots, or proof of concepts or whatever. If I'm a salesperson and I'm motivated to sell, like you want me to be motivated to sell, and like there's commissions to be earned, on sales. A salesperson will go sell something.
They will
It might
sell
not.
to sell
They will sell
somebody.
something. Yeah, it might not be what you want them to sell either.
Right.
And then that creates culture problems, communication problems, create culture problems, right? Because customer success is like, I can't deliver that, or the product doesn't do that, or hey, we don't have an integration to be able to accomplish what you just said we could do, right?
Right.
And then there's problems,
Yeah.
right?
Then I have
So,
to go tell the dev team to spend 6 months building this thing for one customer. That's not our
right,
target customer that we only
right,
have. Right. And
right.
it's like we just wasted our time basically for what, $20,000. Right.
Hey, and just because the top 5 bank in the world tells me that they really would like to see this feature, it doesn't mean we should do it. I mean, I know they want it,
Mm-hmm.
but
But who else
is
wants
it
it?
something that do the other 4 want it too, or the next 20, do they want it, or is this just something for them?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's a big deal. Man, there's so many things we could address.
It's hard because I'm like that. I'm a tech guy, I'm an idea guy, and it's very easy for me to get distracted and want to build. And every single time one customer says that they want one thing in my engineer brain, I'm like, I can build that in like 2 months,
Right,
and then we could have it out for this customer. But I always have to take a step back and say, how many other people want this?
right,
Is this the scalable product? And the last thing I want to mention is you have to stay focused. You have to stay
right,
focused on one market and validate or invalidate that market. There's going to be all these other distractions of people who see your product and say, hey, you can use it for this, or you could also use it for this, or I'll pay you to do this. We just had to say no
right,
to a client a couple of days ago because they weren't in our target focus. Right.
right,
And they're like, hey, I really like what you're doing. I want to use it for this team. But we're like, hey, that's not our target. And it
right,
hurt my heart to like say no because I knew I could build it. But I'm like, Matthew, how many other
right,
people are we set up from a go-to-market strategy standpoint to attack what the vertical that he wants us to go after?
right,
Right. The answer is no, because we're set up to go over here. So we need more of these type of customers. So
right.
all that is
No,
good.
I love that. There's one thing, and we've kind of touched on a couple of things that I'm glad that we've been able to address. But like customers and prospects will ask you for a lot of things. You have a responsibility to say why. Why do you need that? Or why?
Good.
That's a great question. Why do you ask? Because I think that to your point, like your engineering mind goes like, yeah, I can do that. But the question is, why do you want me to do that? And
Mm.
is it really a big deal, or is it just a nice to? And if it's a big deal, why is it a big deal? And really understanding that. And then again, as a founder doing founder sales, which is super important, right? You can start to hear, hey, this is something that we're going to need to be able to bring to the market at some point, maybe sooner than later. But it's problem solving, which I mentioned earlier, which makes a founder successful at sales. intellectual curiosity, ask why, ask how, ask where, ask when, it's just the basic stuff, but continue to ask. And I hear founders do great job in pitching, and selling, when they're trying to sell, whether they use a sales deck or not, that's a whole other thing. We'll talk about that, another time. But they'll say something, and then the prospect will say, yeah, that's a problem too. And then they never just ask, well, why? Why do you say that? Like, why? They never probe and go deeper. And they have to. And we all do it. We get spun up on what we want to talk about, right? And then, but we just don't ask why do you say, why is that interesting? And then just remember, solve the first problem first, right? So like, hey, I can just solve 100 problems today, but 99 aren't mine, right? So I want to solve the first problem first. And then I felt like that was a song. I felt like I was about to break out a song when I said that, by the way.
Do it. I want to hear.
Yes. Yeah, that's a we'll have to do happy hour podcast. Yeah. So
a couple drinks
we'll do that. That'll be fun. But then and then self first problem first, and then it's math. So I mean, those are just things that I try to keep at the forefront of what how I think about things.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think that's really, really big. Because asking why will help you understand what should be on your website, right? It should help you understand the next question you should ask the next customer. Right. And it'll just like help you define, the next set of features for your product too. So that's huge. I'm going to take that away from this interview, because I think I know everything, right? And every time I pitch my product to someone, they get excited, and I'm like, okay, cool. They're excited. Sign on the dotted line. But really, to like solidify that excitement, you really have to ask why. Like, why is that a problem?
And that makes you a thought leader. I mean, those questions,
that's true too,
help you become a thought leader, right? Because the next prospect that you talk to, that you say, I've talked to others who have said, and they're like, man, Matthew really knows me. And and that goes back. I had I think we've never done talk about, like, I've taken many sales, courses, you listen to things and listen to, audiobooks and whatever. And, I tell everybody, like, hey, fill your mind with some of these things. There's no one way to do anything. But I think that, so I use Sandler, so that, unpaid plug for Sandler. But one of the things that I talked about with the founders of one of the groups that I work with is that nobody cares what I do. Nobody cares what you do. They only care that you understand them. And then once they feel like that you understand them, now they're interested in what you do, So I think it's really important for us to ask the why question, to understand why they're saying that. Why? How does that make them feel? How does that affect their day? Do they not get to go, if you're selling to, a big bank, and the person, the director of ops never gets to go to their kid's game on Saturdays because they're here dealing with this problem that's created every Friday night. Hey, that's solving a real problem for somebody. It's good to know, right? So, anyhow,
huge. First, and a lot of startups have trouble with that. They have trouble with sales, and coming across a startup with a solid and consistent go-to-market strategy is difficult. And you spoke about this a little bit, but like, what would you say a startup's biggest misunderstanding or like mistake is when it comes to sales strategy and execution?
Building before you talk to people, like building way too much. I mean, if you've said, hey, I spent $800,000 on building something, but you've never talked to anybody, then I can't, I can't fathom that. Yeah. So I mean, that's a big challenge. I think the other thing too, you just mentioned it a second ago, and I think one of the things that we as sales people and me as a founder of a company that I, with other businesses that I work with, startups and small businesses, is how to get to repeatable, scalable. But the thing is, at this stage, there's nothing repeatable and scalable about anything that you're doing. Yeah. Okay. It's a grind. It's a grind, right? Like there's a lot of trial and error. I mean, go get one customer, go get 5, go get 20, and now maybe we can get to like figuring out what repeatable and scalable looks like. I mean, we should be efforting towards that, but there's not. You don't have repeatable, scalable, and not have a customer. Like you can't say, well, this is a process. Like
not having a customer, like that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that a lot of times early on, we try to over-engineer.
Okay.
We over-engineer a process, and this is like blasphemy probably for me to say, because I'm all about trying to get to the process. but
Right.
you try to engineer the process early on
Hmm.
when, hey, it's just gritty, and it's a grind. And you and I are going to have a call, we had it at 11 o'clock today, even though I was a couple of minutes late. But if I have a call at 12 o'clock, I might take what we learned here, and that's part of my next pitch.
Right.
And I do that with repetition now. Come Q1, Q2, now maybe I have a really good story to tell that's more repeatable, more scalable than what it is today. So
Gotcha. That's good. That's good. There's processes to like pull in customers, but you need to understand your message first. And to understand your message, like you're saying, you just have to go out, talk to people, and
right,
continue to iterate till you get your target customer
yeah,
to have that aha moment.
right,
Oh wow, yeah,
right.
that's on right, and then you can start building something. So that's good.
Yeah, there was one other thing, since you asked me to, one of the challenges that I see often is like, I've been fortunate. I mean, I worked with some really super smart people,
Yeah.
which I like, and I'm always, I shouldn't say this, but I'm always the least tech savvy person in any conversation, that I have. But if I have a superpower, and I hope we all have one, it's like, how do I take that and go tell a story about it? That resonates with somebody who could actually write a check,
Yep.
to say, hey, what, that, and then but the challenge is like, is what you're doing, especially when you're early, is it solving a problem, or is it just cool? Is it a toy, or is it a tool? I used to say that all the time.
Mm.
Like, hey, it can do this and can do that and that. Like, well, that's really cool, but is it solving a problem? And I think one of the things, early stage founders, what is the problem specifically? Who said it? Is it you because you feel like it's a problem? Is it you because you're a subject matter expert? Is it your friend next door, who lives in the apartment building? What's the cost of the problem? And that's where you got to get out and talk to people, right? Like, hey, this is a problem. It's costing me real dollars. It's costing me real time. It's costing me real opportunity somewhere. And then would they pay to fix it? Like, hey, you know what? It's caused me a problem. It's 100,000 problems identified, and if you $1,000,
Right.
then in any case, yeah. So I just wanted to circle back around on that too, since you'd asked.
Yeah, yeah, that's super, super important. Sorry, you cut out just a little bit there, so I missed the last part,
That's
but
okay.
it's recorded. I can
I'm
go back.
sure, I'm sure it was all gold. It was gold. I mean, it was gold. Just don't worry about it.
Awesome.
I'm joking.
Which kind of like throws me on a tangent into like AI and sales. Have you seen like these AI bots that are out now, like cold calling people?
Yeah, I have worked with and for a number of AI startups,
Yeah.
conversational AI. So, primarily in the fintech space. So and this was 5 or 6 years ago. The company I was working with, they were doing some really great things. Obviously, things have changed and advanced very quickly. Some of them are very good. Not just being able to have that human in the room type of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
I think where a lot of these still fail is being able to, understand some of the nuances of conversation, be able to keep context within a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So like you and I moved on, and if I say right now, hey, remember that first job I said? You would remember I was talking about GE Capital.
Yeah.
Um, AI, I mean, that's still an opportunity, right? For that to get better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was a long answer to your question. Yeah,
No, no,
I've
no. It was good. Like the repository of information it could hold in the memory that an AI
right.
had is gonna affect the conversation. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the point. You want that. Um, I don't want to say if you want it to replace someone, but if you wanted to give it that first, tier one, type of support, you've got to have that type of, human in the room type of experience to
True.
make people feel comfortable and want to do it too, by the way, because quite frankly, there's still so many gaps where you're still waiting on hold. You still can't get through if you want to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They still don't have the answer, even if you do get through to someone. I mean, there are so many opportunities, for that to help.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. In like the inbound and the customer support space, I think AI can flourish.
Yeah,
I struggle to see it being effective in the outbound and the closing space when
right,
it comes to sales, right? Because I feel like humans are social people, and people buy from
Right,
people. I don't
right,
see that changing, especially like the B2B enterprise space,
right,
which is why kind of like this human AI combination is, I
right.
think, the most effective. Um,
Well, you've gotten emails from me before, and the tagline on my email is, the human enablement of tech sales. And
yeah,
I think that, um, again, and maybe if I can give a little bit of background, just
yeah,
the last 8 or 10 years of work that I had done. I too, from the early days of selling copiers and fax machines, which by the way, I only sold one fax machine ever, and that was it. There's a journey there about how do you get better if that's something that you really want to do.
hmm,
Um, but in any case, I was a B2B enterprise salesperson, so I was selling, high dollar value, contracts for call center support, and multi-million dollar, multi-year, engagements. And so to translate from that, when I decided I wanted to kind of go do my own thing, and kind of build out my own growth partnership with small businesses, actually, at the time, to
hmm,
help them, kind of operationalize some of their sales processes, so they could, not only flourish as a small business owner, but also be able to scale. Um, but one of the things that I learned once I got recruited into this, emerging tech, venture-backed tech space is, it's one thing to call when you have a big logo, at your
right,
back. So if I'm calling you from, this isn't like an advertisement for AT&T, but if I call from AT&T, you know who AT&T is, kind of what they do, kind of if you need it or not, kind of what the problems are. The only thing is, you might not know me, and that's on me to help you get through that, that know, like, trust, uh,
hmm,
quickly. But when you're calling from and you might be wildly successful selling for AT&T,
hmm,
but when you're doing it for a startup, who is hopefully solving something different, or solving something in a different way, I should say, than what the end user or the prospect is hearing from. Um, you're calling, from a company they never heard of, from a person I've never heard of, about a problem I may or may not know I have, and a solution I do not know or trust.
right,
And how high do you want to buy this?
yeah.
There's a lot of things, and I think that, and I hope I'm not digressing here,
No, no, no.
uh,
I love
but
this.
I think this is one of the things that, like, sales people who become tech founders can struggle with, because they've been really successful in sales careers, but it's different. And I made a million mistakes, and I mean, I'm still learning, and I think that's, something that we should all be doing all the time, is still learning. But
Hmm,
it's different, and you've got to, you really have to, the details of the problems that you're solving matter, and being able to articulate that in a way. You were talking about, AI not replacing, the closing, parts of things. And Salesforce can close, without having somebody hop on the phone. I mean, I'm going to
right.
get on, go buy their stuff, and I don't really need to talk to anybody, even though they still do have somebody reach out to me, when
Hmm,
I, again, not a Salesforce ad here. But yeah, I mean, I think it can take you so far, but it is a relationship. And I think that I'm finally bringing full circle as to why I started this, a couple minutes ago. The relationship part, in the last 7, 8 years where I've been working with tech companies, they still miss the mark there, and they don't focus on it. And they immediately, a lot of the tech companies I work with immediately jump from, I'm going to go build something, which, by the way, they might not have talked to enough people to go build anything yet, but they still go build it anyways.
right,
Um, and then they're just going to go sell. And when they say sale, they mean market.
right.
Because the marketing is the same thing, in many people's minds. And I've had this conversation before. That's not
Yeah,
the same.
yeah.
And the whole thing about developing relationships with people. So anyhow,
No,
I could
that's
for
good.
a while. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was really good. I do want to talk about like marketing or sales.
Yeah.
Like, when should a startup pour more time into marketing or sales? Why not?
All I would ask you, and I'd ask anybody that's listening to this, is tell me the last time you got an email from somebody that you didn't know, that you picked up, a phone, or, responded to an email, or clicked on, like, hey, I want to have a meeting, unless it's something that you definitely need.
Hmm,
Um, I could tailor a message for you to send to me that would get my attention, that I would respond via an email or a marketing campaign or something.
yeah.
But if you know me, and the only reason why you could do that is because you know me and we've talked,
Right.
You've
Have a
you've
relationship.
you've done discovery, right? You've asked me, hey, hey Dana, like what do you do? How did you get started? What are some of the things you're trying to work on? Like now you could tailor a message to me. I think marketing, and it's not either or, it's and, but I would say early on, if you think that you're going to market your way into growth, it is not happening. And it's marketing should do nothing but support what I'm as a sales professional and a sales founder is saying. That's what it should. So when you go to your conference or you finally pick up a phone and call, and people do still call people, and people still do answer sometimes, and even if they don't, it's an opportunity for you to put a human voice. It's Matthew. It's not whoever, right?
Just
Calling.
text.
It's an opportunity. So yeah, it's not. I mean, and it's like fingernails on a chalkboard when somebody says, "Yeah, I want to talk about sales and marketing." I'm like, you should stop at sales, right? Because,
Right.
it's
Sales
funny.
and marketing, they're
Yeah,
both
yeah,
beasts that
yeah,
need a lot of strategy, right?
right,
To do well. It's not just sales or, I mean, sales.
right.
Right.
And these are, sometimes, man, I had a meeting earlier this week. It was somebody that I was disappointed. I'm not going to say who it is, obviously, because they're a friend of mine, but I was really disappointed because I know they know, or at least I feel like they know. And, I was asking some questions and I was like, oh, that's a lot of marketing. Like when I asked you about like, prospects and,
Mhm.
who are some of the targets and the markets that you want to get into, and, some of your better clients that you have today, where do they reside? And let's go find more people that look like that and start to develop, so yeah,
Yeah.
this, maybe there's a time for to talk about this a little bit later. But the sales thing is not, for me, it's not sales. I think it changed for me when I felt like I was solving a problem for somebody.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
I'm really solving a problem for somebody, then I'm not really selling you anything. I mean, if you were injured and hurt, and as an ambulance driver, I drive ambulances, and I gave you a ride, to the hospital. I didn't have to sell you on the fact to get into my ambulance. You weren't looking for quotes either, for another ambulance company. And you were like, hey, I have a need, I have a pain.
Right.
Um, you can solve my pain. Let's
Right.
go. Right? And I think that if you can turn it into math for people, and you can solve a real problem. And
Mhm.
then, by the way, if you can't solve a real problem, then you don't have a solution. You don't have a company, and that's okay. Then we move on and we go do something else, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's super
That's
important.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, we got a couple more minutes left. I just wanted to mention that Dan and I met at Ohio VC Fest, put on by Jumpstart, and that's a place where startups and VCs connect, meet and connect. I'm super happy that we got connected there. And I wanted to ask you if, say there's a startup that's raising money, hasn't raised money quite yet. What is like one piece of advice that you would give them as they go on their journey, and try and bring in customers?
Yeah, I think again, early on, I think the more people that you've spoken to that you can go. Here's the thing: early, and I've had to learn this, myself. Early stage fundraising, it's about you, the founder. Like you don't have not you, Matthew, but you, the early stage founder, don't have it figured out yet. You probably don't have anything built yet, or if you have anything built, it's broke. It's not gonna work anyways. But they're investing in you. So I think that if you can articulate that you've done your homework and that you've spoken to people, you can answer some of these questions, these things that we're talking about what the problems are, what's the cost of the problems. These are people that are saying it's a problem. I think early stage, that would get somebody excited. Because now I'm investing in you because I believe in you. And even if this doesn't work out, I'm going to invest in you anyway, because I know the next thing that you do is going to work out. So I think early on, I think nobody cares about your product. I hate to say that. That's probably not true, but I don't think anybody cares about your product because money can fix the product. We
Yeah,
can,
that's true.
right? So we can go build it, fix it, whatever. So I mean, money can solve for that.
Right.
Money can't solve for you though.
Right.
So
Are you the person to build the culture?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think that making sure that you're a well-rounded founder, that you understand the market, you understand the problems, you understand the solutions that are in the market, why this would be different, what's changed, that enables me now to be able to do this. And again, I would say better, cheaper doesn't get anybody excited, because somebody will be better and cheaper tomorrow, but be different. How are you different than what's there today? I think those are things that I would want as I've sat in pitch calls, that you need to be able to articulate.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, how can people get in contact with you and see your
Hey, well, I'm in Northeast Ohio, so if you're ever in the Cleveland area, look me up. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Dana Allender, DANA ALLENDER. You can email me at Dana DANA at sungrowsu.com. You can also call me. You can or send me a text 330-268-8736. I am always willing to talk to anybody that's kind of starting this journey. And I do have a little bit of economic development DNA, which again, that's kind of a weird thing that got dropped into some of my tech work. But I've worked with some of the economic development partners in the region and the state. So usually if I can't help you, I feel like I've got a resource that I can point you in the right direction and hopefully help you out. So yeah, feel free to reach out. And I know Matthew knows how to get a hold of me too. So if nothing else, you can reach out to Matthew.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dana, for coming on the show. And Dana's a real one. So contact him, see his content, and schedule a meeting to get set up with Sun. All right.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.